Hello to the chicas and the chicos. How are you going, lovely folks? Today we are going to understand our openings again, and I decided to embark on a very tricky journey with the King's Indian, because the more I think about it, the more I find that I will need to make at least 2, 3, 4, 5 videos to cover everything I want to. So I'm going to cut to the chase right away. Excusez-moi. And I will tell you a couple of things up front. One, we are going to head dive first into the main lines, which is something I don't like to do when learning openings, but it's very important that we understand where this whole King's Indian thing is going. And two, I'm going to model you something that you should do if you are playing an opening that you feel that it's too big for you in terms of theory and learning, but you still want to play it. And that's actually a bit of a follow-up on my Sicilian video too, where people went like, yeah, there was a bit of a contradiction there. Sometimes me saying you don't need to learn theory, and then later on saying that yes, you need to learn theory. So the idea is that yes, you do need to learn theory, but you need to do it gradually whilst you are playing the opening already. I would like to refuse to give in to the nonsense of unless you learn all the theory, you are going to lose every single game you want. You want, not unless you are 2700. Anyway, so King's Indian is going to be starting with the absolute classical main line, often referred to as the Mar del Plata variation, mostly because oh bugger, I know now what I forgot to put in. Anyway, because this particular structure in the associated kingside attack was played in a tournament in 1953, if I'm not mistaken, in Mar del Plata, where there were a fair few games played in that variation. And then it started to take off and remained very, very popular for a long, long while. So E5. This is very important that we understand that as King's Indian players, we need to embrace things that we like and things that we don't like as well. And that pretty much applies to all openings. So if you are a French player who loves the win over French, you have to suck up that as soon as you play E4, E6, D4, D5, there is a chance they will take on D5 and they will kill the game. Can't help it. Can't help it. Suck it up, play it. Likewise, there is an exchange variation in the King's Indian, and I didn't even think about it until I had it on the board just then. Suck it up, man. You need to play it. You can't possibly say no to the whole entirety of the greatest main lines of the King's Indian because you don't like the exchange variation. It's just, nah. You need to embrace the likes and the dislikes in an equal portion in chess. I'm a firm believer of that. So if they go exchange variation on you, a very simple and basic variation I would recommend you to do: rook e8, knight d5, knight takes, pawn takes c6, bishop c4, and here instead of the very popular b5 a5 push, I really like this idea that was popularized by Fischer, and that is takes, knight d7, with the idea of kicking the bishop out here. So if they play a random move, you play h6, kicking the bishop out, and after knight f6, the bishop can't go back without surrendering the pawn. And once you take one of the bishops, happy days, man. Happy days. Absolutely awesomely happy days. If they go back this way, then you don't go that way, because then the take retains this very powerful bishop. So you can go g3 here and then knight f6, which is perfectly fine, because now we will have tactics based on this. Or you can also go via b6, but I think this is better actually. I would go g5, knight f6. Perfect. That's it. End of story. End of story. That is your exchange variation covered. What I was going to say before, but somehow I wanted to say so many things, I ended up saying none, is that when you are embracing a ginormous variation, instead of trying to inhale and memorize and stay on top of all variations, one of the best things you can do is to pick a sample game. One game played by two, not one, two good players, because that's a guarantee of quality. So that you see both plans, white and black, played out rather well. And use that as your anchor. Like use that, yeah, I remember that in that game they did this, this, this and that with this, this, this and that plan. Because then you can build around that rather than trying to remember exact lines. So for example, in the main line, King's Indian, the pick at Kasparov was almost always one of my go-to games, which followed knight e1, knight d7, bishop e3, f5, f3, f4, the main line, g5, b4. Basically the rule of thumb, and again I am promoting the knight d7 main line instead of the knight e7 one. The purpose, by the way, of knight e7 is to hold c5. Since this is a series about understanding our openings, it's important that we get what's played for what reason. And so when white plays a move that supports the c5 break, that's your instant cue that knight needs to go away from d7. It's useless anymore. We don't need this in the defense anymore. We need it in the attack to support g4. That's it. And until b4 or something supporting c5 is being played, you continue with the other moves in the kingside attack, usually h5 and knight g6, and keep your horse on d7 in order to hold up c5. Very important stuff. Once b4 or knight d3 comes, off you go. Knight f6. And now the second thing to do is to vacate the 7th rank, so that when you play rook f7, it will come on time to cover this square. Why is it so important? Bang. Imagine we play it here h5. Black plays knight b5. We play a6. White plays knight c7. Rook here. And although bishop a7 does win material here, but the dreaded motif that we so badly want to avoid is based on this knight e6 jump. Because what this does is that it basically trades off this bishop, which is the best piece on the board and the most important one for from black's point of view in the king's Indian. Because this is the piece that we usually sacrifice on h3. It supports the g4 break, and it also supports the sacrifices on h3. Losing it is deadly. And so we play rook f7, so that if knight b5, then we can play a6 and shoo the knight away. And that's very, very important to do. So rook f7, a4. So what white is trying to do here is to play a5, knight b5, provoke a6, and then occupy the b6 square. Knight here, knight here, knight here. Bishop f8 back. Once again, a typical move that is defense and offense at the same time. It covers d6 and prepares for the rook to support the g-file attack. a5, bishop d7. This is the only move that is debatable. Usually we don't develop this bishop because it doesn't stand better on d7 than c8. Couldn't tell you why it was exactly played, and you would need to think about why h5 is bad here. What happens if h5? So knight b5, a6, bishop b6. I don't know, man. Is this that bad? 97, I guess. Okay, so perhaps the point of this thing was the bishop d7. If knight b5 now, oh, I can go g4 right away. That's clever. Okay, and thus we arrive at another motif that I wanted to show you, and that is that g4 is very important to get through, and anytime this knight goes, you don't need to prep it anymore, because g4 is good to go, because takes knight e4 is just terrible for white. And that's exactly what happens here. He plays knight b5 too soon, allowing g4. And you just go. You just go. Every single time when there is a chance for you to accelerate the attack, you must grab it. Knight c7, and you don't even look. Like you pretend that that part of the board doesn't exist. It's about mate. And bang. Hikaru played a breathtakingly beautiful attack against Gelfand in a similar structure, well worth looking up. Knight a8, knight h5, and now queen h4. Note that we're not even taking the free piece, not the point. The point is to put a queen here and mate the king there. Thank you very much. King h1, now we do take the piece. But again, note that the knight is ready to jump in. Knight, rook f2, knight g3 check. Bang, beautiful attack. King g1, queen takes a8. Still leaving this on prey because upon take, rook back, the queen returns and mates. Bishop c4. And here Kasparov played something breathtakingly beautiful. a6. This move is such an amazing move. And the reason for that, of course, you would expect me to go like, well, bunny is... No. Queen a7, man. Look at this diagonal. White has nothing to contest it with, and worse still, he actually falls for the trick to come, which is knight h1, winning a full piece now on f2. Beautiful game by Kasparov. So once again, let's go quickly through the main strategic points. So we embrace main line because we want to checkmate. That's what we play the King's Indian for. More on that in a second. When b4 or knight d3 comes to support c5, we abandon d7 because the knight is no longer useful on the queen side. Attack like mad. Usually rook f7 is a very good piece to neutralize threats. And anytime g4 is a go, it's a go. You just go with it. And from there on, you just focus on the king and how to mate it. That's it. Now, one very important thing that I would like to talk a lot about, and I wanted to develop part of this series around Daniel Naroditsky, a very big aficionado of the King's Indian, and certain variations I'm going to use his games and ideas. But Danya is a very, very big aficionado of the ED4 variation, whereas I am one of the more old school dudes who play King's Indian because I want to play a main line where I checkmate the heck out of my opponent. Now, Danya and the level where he plays is a different ballgame entirely from mine, and especially from those of you guys who watch this video. He has got his reasons. Let's worry about certain variations when we get to 2650. So until then, let's just roll with the main lines as per shown. Now, one thing I forgot to tell you, and this is basically the absolute most important thing that you need to know about the classic King's Indian mainline setups. If you don't know what I'm about to tell you in the next 2 minutes, you're going to lose a lot of painful games without knowing what hit you and why things are going so wrong. And amazingly, this mistake is regularly repeated up to international master level on a regular basis. Like the number of games I have won online blitz as white with this is insane. And that is the following. In the King's Indian defense, white's ultimate piece layout looks like this. Knight on d2 and bishop on e3. If white gets this, we have fundamentally failed with everything we wanted to do in the King's Indian. So, and I will tell you why in a second, and that is the reason why in the two main lines, after castles knight c6, d5, knight e7, white either plays knight d2, but then the bishop doesn't get to e3, or plays knight e1 and have the bishop here. But they can't achieve both. They would like to, but they can't. And the reason for that is because bishop e3 is met by knight g4. And they just cannot get that setup. And so now the bishop needs to go, and then we already have access to f5. That's why they go knight e1 and then play f3 so that knight g4 has been covered, and then the bishop can safely occupy the diagonal. But never the two. So you never ever see against good King's Indian players that white would achieve a bishop e3 knight e2 setup. And usually white does it by playing bishop e3 here. So what you must know as black is not to play here knight c6. It's not transitioning into the main line. It's transitioning into an absolutely painful, horrendous defeat. I'll show you how. So you play knight c6, d5, knight d2. Usually people here go knight d7, b4, f5, f3, f4, bishop f2. And by now, usually the better players as black recognize that the poo hit the fan because the king hasn't castled. So I'm attacking here the nothing. And at the same time, I am getting absolutely shreked. Note this knight here hitting d6. Yeah, knight g6, takes, knight b5, hanging. You can just throw in the towel right here, right now. Black has achieved absolutely zilch. Nothing. Not even close to having an attack on the king's side. And we are already dead. Absolutely dead on the queen's side. Do not fall for this. And one of the worst things that I often see done by players, and we're still taught by coaches, and again, I'm talking international masters here, who actually tell their students to not to play here e5, because it allows the d5 variation and the exchange and lots of others. No, 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 play knight c6, and whatever they play, you play e5, and then you play knight e7, and you are back in main line. Nah, you're back to don't do this ever if you want to enjoy the King's Indian. Well, that's what you are back at. So, two things you must know. You can't cut a corner. You cannot cut a corner with e5. You can't. Forget that. By not playing e5. You must. Just embrace it. And second, you also can't cut a corner by playing knight c6 here instead of e5 first. It's just not cool, man. Don't do this. So you must understand that after e5, bishop e3, there are lots of very good variations for black. You can play knight g4, probably the most popular line, but ed4 is also quite playable. Here there is c6, there is even h6, shockingly quite playable. Queen e8, Kasparov even tried queen e7. Lots of moves are out there. Do not play knight c6 here. On that note, moving on. Let's go into different layout perhaps. No. No. I thought this one would do it. Whatever. It's a bit weirdly cut, but you see the board. That's what matters. Knight d2 variation. So now I'm showing you the other one. This one is entirely out of fashion. Hardly anyone plays it, so I will be very quick. The point here is to get the knight quickly on c4 at the expense of not having the bishop on e3. And Kasparov, he plays a very weird line because usually we play knight d7 and hold c5 as long as we can. He instead goes on an attack instantly with f5. What you need to remember here is this bishop h6 move is very common with the idea of coming in here. But right now, actually, white has knight here, and although we do trade bad bishop for good, it sort of delays the attack and accelerates white's. And so now c5, knight b5 is fast in. So instead, Kasparov closes it off again and then goes on a vicious attack. Note again the defense and how it's laid out. So the rook covers the 7th and the bishop covers d6. Gets ready for b4. Now it's very important that if b6 comes, we are dead. Can't happen. So b6 has to be played here to hold up white. And now the attack on white side kind of slows down because neither of these can be attacked by another piece. I mean, knight a4 technically is possible. But now this attack is gaining far more momentum than the one down here. So takes knight h4, and we are already threatening to take and shrek them apart. And this damage is nowhere near as painful as they would like it to make it. So b5, b6, remember that. Take d6, knight a2, and g4. Again, the motif, e4 is unguarded. You don't need h5. Stuff that. Waste of a move. Forget it. Go. You need to go. They take it. Fine. Knight h4. Now this is on, and if they defend it, you just go h5. And g4 is just Gonski. And again, the attack is looking very good. Knight e4 is good too. He plays rook b3, knight g4. I will accelerate it now to the tactic. Black is totally winning here because the kingside attack is really dangerous and white's pieces are scattered here. Check out this tactic. Bang! Knight takes h2, king takes, and the rook takes c4 with the beautiful vision that if the rook takes, then we have got mate into takes, takes, and checkmate. Nothing like this could get past Kasparov in his prime. And I very highly recommend you, by the way, when I talked about those example games, always go to Kasparov with the King's Indian. He is an unparalleled genius. Now, let's move on to one of the biggest issues, and a lot of people actually turned away in the past 15 to 20 moves from the King's Indian because of the bayonet attack and the impact the bayonet attack has had on the King's Indian in strong association with Kramnik-Kasparov rivalry and how Kramnik has blown a hole on the King's Indian. And you can say that yes, it has. Again, 2790 and above, you can realistically have serious concerns. Below that, hear me out and I will tell you the goods. I've got two recommendations for you. First of all, I recommend you do not play the most popular main line with knight h5 because A, this is what the white players will know better, and two, that's where the white play becomes very, very thematic and easy to play, even if you don't know what to do. As in, even if you don't know your theory. So I recommend we play a5, which almost always is met by bishop a3. This is the more popular response, with the idea that if this trade takes place, then c5 comes fast. And now I need to go back a little bit. So in order to understand, first of all, what you need to understand about the bayonet attack is that basically what white is trying to do here is to launch this queenside attack without moving the knight away from f3. What that allows white to do is that if I blindly follow my usual routine of attack, then this knight move is really painful. I actually lost a game like this as a rookie King's Indian player because I just didn't know that this thing was a thing. And after takes, it's very hard to regain the pawn because queen c8 loses to knight d5. And we can't take because of this. So, and consequently, by the way, as a result of us not being able to play for this quick f5, what you need to embrace is the fact that white's initiative in this setup in the bayonet in general is more prominent than ours. So if you compare it to the Mar del Plata where we are running at the king like mad and try to checkmate the heck out of it, here it's less apparent that we can get there. In fact, more often than not you find that the battle switches from the king side to center queen side. So once again, the best thing I can tell you about that is suck it up. You have to accept that sometimes you are not on the attacking side but on the defense. To bring up an analogy, imagine if you are playing the dragon as a Sicilian player because you love attacking that white king and you can't wait to shine with the dragon bishop. And then someone plays bishop e2 kingside castle and plays that old classical dull line. That's it. That's what was dealt to you. You adjust. There is not going to be kingside attack on the kings because they are same side castle. There is not going to be fireworks and 17 pieces sacrificed. It's going to be a positional grind. That's what it is. You must embrace it. You can't always get what you are hoping to get and your favorite lines. And with that mindset shift, you already are better prepared to embrace a problem like the bayonet. So we need to respect the position, the ideas, and the theory behind it rather than just trying to do the one size fits all. I'm a King's Indian player, I'm going to attack you. It doesn't work that way. Sometimes you will, sometimes you won't. And so, two tricks. Actually, one trick, one line. The trick line I recommend you to try out is b6. After which, when they play a4, I recommend you to try the knight e8 variation. It's a very sneaky move that is actually based on a cheapo. And this is the type of opening trick that I recommend you to use as opposed to the Chumbawamba gambit, whatever. Like sack 7 pieces because hopefully you will win a queen. So this is a sound move that prepares f5. But it has a very subtle trick to it that a lot of top players fell for. Even Ben Feingold missed it actually. And then I saw him playing this on the black side. The trick is this. White thinks a5 is good to go. And that's what they are playing for. a4 is played with the idea of a5. Trade, get the bishop here hitting c7, knight b5, c5, kill, kill, kill. So a5 looks extremely logical here. And it's almost instantly losing to c5. A beautiful counterpunch, and now we understand, because that's what we do in this series, our moves. Knight e8 was designed so that after c5 takes, the pawn is actually defended. So now we have got a filthy double attack on these two. And black is going to be a pawn up no matter what. Clever trick. Now, obviously a5 is a bad move against it, but nothing gives white an obvious huge edge. Okay, and we very often break up with c5 in this line. So for example, even after queen b3, the computer reckons that c5 is playable and takes. And then bishop here, knight here, semi-decent position. You don't have to, by the way. So bishop h6 or king h8 are moves here too. Just preparing for f5. And the reason why we don't do that without bishop h6 is because then knight g5 comes. It's a very difficult position, and you can't really rely on the engine here. So for example, here, according to the engine, for a long while, h3, bishop g7 were best moves. And you go like, just move the bishop to h6. So don't believe everything that you see instantly on the engine's evaluation, because in static positions, they take forever to actually figure out what's going on. So this b6 trick is one thing that I would recommend you to try out. And now I'm showing you a game Vtachnik against Solleveld. Vtachnik is 26-16 when it's played against a 24-50. So now Vtachnik plays knight b5 with the idea of putting yet another attacker on d6, but abandons the center, and so we go f5. He plays a5, we take e4. It's a common piece, pawn sack, by the way. White wants to retake like so, and so we sack the pawn. Very common theme in this line, and we come from h6 and we try to be very annoying on e3. Knight f5, beautiful tempo. Usually the knight that is shockingly bad in the King's Indian on e7 performs miracles on f5. Look at this. And black is doing quite well here, actually. Taking on a5 was the more accurate move order. So here black made a mistake, but Vtachnik counter-blundered by taking on e5 and the b6 and allowing this check. Take, check. Take, queen h4. Oopsies. Knight is on. Should the knight move? Mate. Ouchie. And after bishop takes b6, black is comfortably a pawn up, goes on to win. That's one of my recommended lines for you against the bayonet. The other one... Oh, that's just another game. But this is actually a little bit more typical of this structure. So knight b5, f5, knight d2. Instantly defending, so not giving up the free pawn. Probably a wise choice. Bishop h6. And again, the plan is simple. You want to take, you want to take. They played queen b3. And we took the pawn and we took the pawn. And here what white tried to do was quite interesting. Fail. But an interesting one. Bishop g5, knight f6, and he tried to turn it into a kingside attack. But black managed to fend it off. And the pin didn't work. And black went on to win. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. Yeah, I knew that there was another game that I forgot to copy. So those two were the 98 games. However, I want to show you a knight d7 one as well, so that we get the full picture. So knight d7 instead of b6. b6 only makes sense if you combine it with knight d8. Knight d7, a4, and now you just leave it. So now you wait until they prepare again for c5, which usually happens like so, or like knight a4. Either or, f5, bishop d3. So white again is trying his best not to play f3. Knight f6. Now we give up c5. And for this reason, by the way, moves like king h8 are very popular here, with the idea of regrouping this knight so that this knight can hold c5. Again, understanding moves like king h8, you look at it, you go like, what? And unless you know that it's played because this knight wants to come here, you are not going to go far with your openings. Anyway, so he plays knight f6, which is double-edged, but again, this type of position is actually quite comfortable for black. We lost the e4 square, but knight is incoming, the bishop is quite active, no dramas. This is actually the wrong rook here, but nonetheless, the game later on becomes quite sharp and black goes on to win. But I would stop here. As far as the opening is concerned, totally fine. We are developed, d6 is not weak. OG. Totally a-okay. So the main point is not to be scared from this, but rather try to embrace it, try to figure out what's going on, and you will be mint. Okay, we have seen this. What's this? Last but not least, a little talk about the Petrosian d5 variation. So that's d6, bishop e2, e5, d5. So it's very important that in this position we actually secure this square for the knight. And after bishop g5, it's super important that you play h6. I actually lost, I didn't lose actually, I drew a game where I played very quickly in the opening. I played here immediate knight a6 against a friend of mine in a very important game actually for getting h6. And after knight d2, I realized what I have done to myself. h6 and the bishop drops back to e3. Go back to 10 minutes ago when I told you the ultimate King's Indian setup. I can't possibly allow my opponent to reach this. Luckily, I got away with this with a quick draw for a couple of moves later. But that's the reason why we need to play h6 here. So that the bishop can't, again, assume this position after knight d2. Knight a6, queen e8. The idea is to get out of this pin so the knight can move and then we can go. Castles, bishop d7. Last piece developed. It's often played so that if they play for a3, we can shut down that break with a4. And so it forces them to start with b3. Knight a7. Both to open up f5, but there is a deeper strategy here, and that is h5. We would play this move against a3 as well. h5, threatening to trap the bishop, forcing h6. And then again, the bishop now gets to conquer this diagonal, which is an even better plan here for black than the stock standard f5. Usually the stock standard f5 here is too slow. So bishop f2, f4, a3, g5, rook b1, something or other, b4, knight f6, c5, and white is crashing through. c6 here. Next is a very famous motif, g4, c6. And just on time, white has done the damage. Can't take twice because of the fork. Even here, black has some play, but white is better. So instead of doing this, we here play a very, very nice dark squared strategy. Check this out. Bishop h6, planning to go in here. Bishop f2, queen e7. Idea is pawn here, queen here, 19, 19, 19. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful dark squared strategy. Check it out, knight f6. And now the plan is 19, 19, and then hurt them on g2. Very, very hardcore. Sometimes you can even play stuff like knight g3 and go in here, but just knight f4 in general is a very, very splendid way to conduct this attack. I'm looking at the engine. It says something quite wild about take. Nah, it's okay. It changed its mind. But this position is pretty much in balance. We can continue with f5. We can continue king g7, rook across, and then try to sell this idea. Black is doing fine. In the game, white went crazy, played f4, which by the way is a typical motif here, because if you take this way, knight f3, e5, and all of a sudden white breaks through in the center and sacks a piece, rather a queen. Boomski. And the total dark square domination, man. Lovely, absolutely lovely play by black. Who is, by the way, who is the black dude here? Actually, I'm looking at a game here between... Oh, it's Yugurov. Syugirov. That's right, 2600 GM. Syugirov as black. Not bad. And really the rest is irrelevant for our intents and purposes. It was just the opening. The pieces outweigh the queen, and actually that queen gets trapped now, because this mate can only be fended off at the cost of the queen. So that's a lot of stuff, man, and there's so much I need to tell you still. But at least we covered the main line, the knight d2 line. I told you about the bishop e3 ideas that you need to avoid with knight d2. We talked about the bayonet with the early a5 push and then take on b4 and then knight d7, f5 and so on. So hopefully I can mesh it together. Now, in another later chapter in this video, I will tell you about the fact that the King's Indian I also like a lot because it allows you transitions to other openings, in particular Benoni. So next time round, we are going to look at variations that allow black to transition into Benoni structures, such as the Zaimish, the four-pawn attack, the Averbach, and even the H3 line. So we are going to look on at those in the second installment of this video. The greatest learning that you should take away from this, if you ever consider playing the King's Indian main lines as black, is to remember that you cannot play this. This is a no go. This is the alpha and the omega. That's the first thing you need to learn, because then you will understand the subtleties of the knight e1 and the bishop e3 variation. Ooh, just one more thing. I also forgot to show you, time is a killer, man, with YouTube, the knight d3 line, where white often puts the bishop here to simply save a tempo on f4. So here we don't have f4, as in, sorry, we do, but it's not a tempo, and now white is trying to come at us like so. Actually, knight b5 is a more common move. I used to play this line a lot myself as white. And here the most important thing to note is to not to win this piece. This is not good for black at all. Don't do this. Instead, just be ready for take knight c7 by playing rook f7, as per discussed in the Kasparov game. And if bishop a5, then play b6. And if takes, again, do not take the piece. Take this. And go back into King's Indian structure where you can go and attack. That's all, folks. I must go. Next video, we are going to deal with other variations. If you have got any questions, concerns, I'm pretty good usually at answering the comments. So if you think I haven't covered something that you would like to know, please mention it. Otherwise, I will be back with more understanding your openings King's Indian videos later on. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.